So I'm here with Robbie Wallace. We're actually in Coeur d'Alene right now at the Coeur d'Alene Resort in Idaho at a self-storage conference. So that's pretty cool. A lot to talk about with that. But what's really interesting is Robbie owns and operates a lawn care service, and he didn't start with that. He started in the corporate world, and so we want to talk to him about how he made that transition and what the origin story is, how he did it, starting his lawn care service. So we're with Robbie right here.
Good to see you.
Good to have you here, man.
Thank you.
Yeah, so tell me, because this is all about being really actionable, not just kind of fluff of conversation, but like how you started. Like
Sure.
let's dive deep into what was the first thing you did to get going in the lawn care, because a lot of people talk about that now. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. I think the biggest thing is, and we can get to the kind of what led up to this if you like, but I essentially closed down that apartment that I was working in about a week before I turned 40. And, when you turn 40, that's one of those things where you're already kind of self-conscious about it and everything else. Happened to be the week before Christmas, blah, blah, blah. And I was just frustrated at that point. And I was talking to a good friend of mine, and I said, "Hey, I've got a nice tax refund coming. I'm thinking about just buying a lawnmower and some equipment and just doing something on the side and just get away from what I've been doing for the last 20 years." And really started from there. And that was almost 8 years ago.
Okay, so I guess the root of it is you had money from taxes. You were sick of doing the work that you're doing, and remind me again exactly what you were doing.
Sure. So my career over 20 years really kind of covered two different areas. The first was financial services, which I did for about 11 years. And the other was transportation, which was about, I guess, 13, 14 years, something like that, with FedEx and UPS. All of that was in sales. Really good companies, really good money, learned a lot, really kind of broke out of my comfort zone from the standpoint of, talking to people and things like that. Because before that, like from a disc profile standpoint, I'm a DC, which typically not the most, I guess, I like people, but I'm not the kind to just kind of go out there and look for conversations, you might say. And it really taught me to overcome that within my own, I guess, abilities, and really taught me how to have conversations and ask questions and things like that. And that's, I don't think that it definitely wouldn't have been a natural fit for me out of the gate, when I was a young man coming out of college to go into sales. But yeah, that's kind of in summary.
Okay, so you had been doing the corporate thing for a long time, the security, the benefits,
Sure.
the 9 to 5 essentially, and you were burned out. You were done with that. Like how long from the decision to make that change to when you bought the mower and started?
That's a good question. I'd say about 5 years. I got really sick. I mean, it wasn't 9 to 5. As you know, it's probably 5 to 5 or 3 a.m. to 5 kind of thing most of the time. I love to work. I don't have a lot of hobbies, which I've worked on, but it's just that's a tough thing to overcome. So I like to work. So I'd go in early, get things done, get there before other people, and just kind of knock things out. But it came to a point where right after my daughter was born in 2012, I ended up getting a staph infection and pneumonia and the flu all at the same time. And I was practically on my deathbed and ended up having to have lung surgery and was in the hospital for 16 days. It was a rough time, and I'm convinced that a good part of that was, or at least a big cause of that was, just the work and the stress and really not the frustration. I think you kind of build that up internally, physically and things like that. I mean, your immune system and everything else. And it was just one of those things where it was kind of when I realized that I almost died, I didn't really realize that at the time, but when my mom walked in and was, as soon as she saw me, I hadn't eaten in about 2 weeks. As soon as she saw me, she started crying. I was like, what the heck's, what's going on? Then I kind of realized, I got 8 tubes in my chest and everything else. And it was one of those things where it was just kind of a rude awakening. So I continued for about 4 years after that, just saying, hey, I'm not going to let this beat me. I'm going to beat the system. I'm going to make this work. We were doing a lot of cutting edge things that other folks weren't doing. And I was convinced that we'd be able to make it work. And in the end, that big experiment kind of failed. And that's when they shut down the division. So,
Wow. Okay. There's a lot to dive into on that. Okay. And we might even have to do another episode to talk, to talk more on that. So a turning point that was, maybe 5 years in the making of you realizing what you were doing was not what you wanted to do for the rest of your life.
Sure.
You had, a little bit of money from taxes. You mind sharing how much that was?
It was about a $5,000 refund. I think I spent $3,500 on equipment at that point.
Okay, so you wanted to make the pivot. You had $5,000, $3,500 of it allocated towards equipment. And why lawn care?
I'd read a long time ago. Ironically, I thought about storage over the years, but I'd read a long time ago that lawn care is relatively recession resistant just because a lot of cities require it. Corporations want it, to make things look pretty year round and things like that. And honestly, I just like to work. I like to sweat. I like to do physical. I hate to work out, but I love to do physical, labor. And I was like, this will just be a good way to kind of take some of my frustration out on, my daily stresses and things like that. And just seemed like a good fit, honestly. I just enjoy the work. So.
Okay. So starter package lawn care service. Yep. Somebody right now has $3,500 without even talking about what to do after you buy the equipment. What sort of equipment do you need?
I started with a Honda commercial push mower. My son at the time, this was 8, so he would have been about 13. He and I were mowing this huge neighborhood with a push mower, and we got paid like $80 to do it, which was pretty bad. But we just wanted the work. So we started out with a push mower, a nice high quality, the best commercial push mower that I could find within reason. Commercial trimmer, commercial edger, commercial backpack blower. And then the rest of it, I just used like a free app to kind of send invoices and set up jobs and things like that. And other than that, it was all done on a spreadsheet. That's what I started doing. So that first year, I think we earned like $17,000 part-time. So.
Okay. I was going to ask.
Yeah.
Okay. So, were you bridging the gap at all, or did you drop your other job, your 9 to 5, everything that you're doing before you drop that cold turkey and go right in?
It was a little bit of both. I actually took a significant pay cut. I went from about, to scramble to find something after they shut down my division. I went from making about 130 a year to about 50. And so it was a huge, we had to backpedal on a lot of things. We sold our camper, sold our SUV, things like that. Just really downsized. My wife's a stay-at-home mom. She's working on her master's now, but at the time, 3 little ones at home and things like that. I was really just doing it after work and on Saturdays and Sundays. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so how long were you doing that until you felt comfortable making the leap?
So there's a couple of dynamics to that. And one is that I continued to do it. I think I maybe did 45 or 50 that next year. But we actually, right at the end, right a year after we started, we moved from the Oklahoma City market to where we live now, which is Rapid City, South Dakota. And so I had to kind of start all over, just kind of migrated things, took a full-time job, was back up around the kind of income that I was used to. But, it's kind of weird. The first 25 years of my career, I had like 3 or 4 jobs total, including my first job I had for 8 years. But 90 days after we got to Rapid City, they got rid of my director position nationwide at the company I was working for as well. So it was kind of a second layoff in a handful of years. So I just kind of took what I could in the meantime. And then I got to the point to where I had a full-time job also in sales with a local foundation repair company. And when I got $100,000 worth of revenue on the calendar for that summer, and I was telling my wife, I said, I don't know what to do. I said, I'm so busy already, working full-time. I'm thinking about just dropping the lawn care service. And she's like, no way, you need to quit your job, So I thought about it for about a week, and this would have been right when COVID started, March of 2020. And so I went and talked to the owner, and I said, I'm giving you my 2 weeks notice. He said, well, you can just leave now. And I said, I'm okay with that, because I had $100,000 on the books at that point, and the season hadn't even started. So that was kind of the transition.
Okay, so it almost like, because I think about that too. I'm still in my W-2. I'm trying to bridge that gap, right, and do all these things to to get to that transition point.
Sure.
That transition point for you, it was like it almost forced your hand.
Sure. It was it in hindsight, it wasn't a hard decision, but at the time it was.
Okay, yeah, that's another good point. Is like people will ask us all the time, how do you know? Like at what point, do you just take the leap? And it seems like it was just an obvious decision for you. It was a no-brainer.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm definitely uncomfortable with it. I had been doing snow removal that winter, in between, after work and on weekends, and honestly taking a little bit of time off during the day to do it and things like that. And it was my first snow removal season, and I think we made at that point, I think we'd made 35 or 40,000 in snow removal that winter. So it was kind of a little bit of a precursor as to what was to come. So, but I felt like things were consistent enough to make the leap. But yeah.
Can you break down, as general as you want to be, the ramping up of revenue that you've had since you started, just kind of year by year, what your gross has been, and then if you know offhand what your expense ratio is?
I'm probably not the best with that. I'm looking to talk to a good bookkeeper that I know of.
I might know one, yeah.
Yeah, and I've just been dragging my feet because it's a little bit of probably a rude awakening, but it's just one of those things that you really need to do. I just haven't done yet. So I don't know expense ratios, but using general numbers, the first year I was full time. Let's see, let me just check. Let's see, 20, 21, 22, 23. We went up about $100,000 of revenue a year up until last year, and then this year we're doing about the same as last year. So we went from about, round numbers, 150 to 250, 250 to 350, 350 to 450, and that's about where we'll be last year and this year. So
okay, yeah, and you and I have talked before, just kind of on valuation and rough numbers from what we discussed. I think we came up with somewhere in the like 600 to 700 range if you were to sell right now.
Right.
So that's, just that alone is incredible. You went from doing the same thing for a long time, and something that you fell out of love with, that was burning you out, that you weren't super passionate about. The transition happened just over time as you started realizing this, and you literally took $5,000 and bought lawn care equipment and started with your son, knocking on doors, getting customers, getting neighborhoods, and just grinding it out. And now if you were to sell, that could be a pretty cool sale.
Yeah.
600, 700,000.
Sure.
That's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah. Cause lawn care is kind of in right now, right? All the home services, lawn care, landscaping, plumbing, HVAC, all of that is kind of this sexy new trend of people looking in acquisitions, ourselves included, right? If you were to tell somebody that doesn't want to buy, but instead they want to start like you did, just the how to start a lawn care service 101, the top 5 things in your mind, or maybe top 2, top 3.
Yeah, I'll do my best.
What would you say?
Yeah, I would say, we talked about the equipment. Buy, good quality name brand equipment, commercial grade, not the stuff you get at Home Depot where you get a trimmer for $80. Go spend $280 or $380 on a good trimmer, for example, or that commercial mower I talked about. You can go buy a $400 mower all day long, but I think I spent $1,400 on this one back in 7 or 8 years ago. I'd say that's the first one. The next thing is, and I always tell my guys, I'm not a micromanager. It's fun managing guys, especially when they're younger and they're trying to learn. And, a couple of guys don't have the best mentors in their life as it is. So it's kind of nice so I always say, do things right the first time. I think that's the biggest thing. If it takes you an extra 2 minutes to go back and trim an area that you missed, or a spot you forgot to mow, or something that doesn't look right, if you break something, be sure to let the customer know. But it always works out that way. Just to be clear on that, it always works out to do things right the first time. We just got my 100th Google review about an hour ago, and we're at 5.0 stars. So I'm proud of that. Nice. From the standpoint of, yes, it costs you money and time and things like that to do it right, but it's worth it. I'd say the other thing, especially really industry wide, but even in my area, is answering the phone. And I get bogged down with text messages and emails and phone calls, and but I make it a priority to get back to those prospects or customers on things. And when I don't do it in a timely manner, which is not very often, but when that is the case, I just simply say, hey, thanks for your patience. I apologize. Something fell through the cracks or whatever. Just fall on your sword and make sure that you get back to that person. Just answering the phone and the messages. That's the biggest thing. And I say, and this is a little harder to go into because everybody has their own philosophy, but just the culture with your employees. And I hate, honestly, you and I've talked about this as well. A lot of employees, they don't care about the culture. They're like, oh, so-and-so, my boss comes in and says, hey, this is what we believe. This is what we do. And they're just like, whatever, I'm making 15, 20, 25 bucks an hour. I really don't care. This is just a job for me. But I think the biggest thing in my mind is treating your employees like family. Getting to know them and understand them and, what their fears and problems are. And again, I've been in a position to be able to mentor some young men, and I think, I don't want to put myself up on a pedestal, but I think it's been a good influence on those guys, and making sure that they know that you appreciate their work and tell them thank you and pay them well. Make sure they stay loyal, buy them an Amazon gift card for a birthday, send them a happy birthday text, things like that. I'd say kind of off the top of my head, those are probably a handful of things that I would say.
Okay. I like those. I'm going to kind of go through and summarize those. So, first and foremost, quality equipment.
Sure.
Buy that quality equipment. Second, quality of service that you're providing your clients. Third, answer the phones. Yeah. Just as simple as that. Answer the phones, and that goes for all businesses, sure. Right? Sure. And then fourth being company culture. And what's crazy, as we wrap up here, I want to highlight this point is you came into this. You didn't grow up in the lawn care business. You came into this without any experience. You bought some equipment and you got going. And what's made you successful hasn't been, wow, Robbie's a great, he's an expert lawn care operator. What's made you successful is just doing really simple things well, right? And all of these are things that we could hit, whether it's a lawn care service, whether it's, HVAC or, ditch digging, right? Yeah. It's those four things that you hit were so crucial. And I'm glad you brought those up.
Yeah. Just one more thing, just to elaborate on the culture. The industry does have a lot of turnover. I've taken on some younger guys who have either started businesses. Some of them are in their teens. Another guy is a veteran who just bought a franchise. And so I try to, if there's something I can't do, I refer it to them. If I can't handle the load, or if it's something I don't want to do, I refer it out. But a lot of them struggle with keeping guys, on their crews. And I've been very fortunate in the almost 8 years I've been doing this. I've really only had about 5 employees. Most of them have been here. One guy started this year, but most of them have been here at least 3 years. And that's hard to do nowadays. And I think it is about treating them right, and that culture that I talked about.
Yeah, that's totally a testament to your leadership abilities. And we talk a lot, so I know how often you're out there interacting with them and working with them, and it's a people business. Sure. Not just your employees, but also your customers, and, right. And you do that really well. Robbie, thank you so much for coming on. You're officially our first guest here, so we really appreciate it. What are the best ways that people can find you if they want to just introduce themselves, or if they want to start a lawn care service themselves?
Sure. The only thing I'm really active on social media wise is Instagram. I think I should know this. I think it's just at Kilted Lawn or kiltedlawn.com, KILTEDLAWN.com.
Cool.
Thank you,
Robbie. Thank you.